though some types of income, sometimes income are taxed differently in Russia. Notably, the dividends vary. If the company early stating which stands for Russian legal entity receives dividends, then it may be taxed at either 0% or 9%, depending on the type of dividends. 0% is normally from the dividends from state securities, state or municipal securities. But if there will be foreign company, let's say Italian Enel company getting dividends out of Russian some oil field project, then 15% will be applicable. And if there will be some third company involved in transporting, let's say, the vehicle with cash representing dividends from Russia into Italy, then it will qualify as cross-border transportation and taxable at 10% rate. So you see, there are different rates. And actually, my experience with Kazakhstan, with South Korea, with other countries, made me to insert there the red line. No tax on profit or on tax on net profit of foreign establishment. So what happens technically? Let's go back to the example of Fenera. They created a subsidiary in Russia. Subsidiary works as any other Russian company because it is one. Now, it pays 20% out of its taxable profit as corporate profit tax. That's it. But then, out of net profit, it may decide to pay out dividends. And these dividends will be subject to 50%. So, double taxation, economic double taxation. Now, what happens if Fenera decide to create a branch? The branch may be engaged in full-scale commercial activity. So the branch may even run some sort of production. And could you imagine that? The branch becomes permanent establishment because it produces something, because it conducts real business in Russia. So it should pay what? Okay, 20%. 20% is a common rate. But what happens next? The net profit of permanent establishment, could it be withdrawn by Fenera into Italy? Yes, it's very simple. It's just the boss from Fenera office, head office, call the branch and tell, okay, please repeat immediately to our Italian bank account 10 million euros.
Please let me stop another time. Is that clear for you enough, the distinction between subsidiary and branch? Did you pass commercial law? And okay, another very just to clarify this example, which is very good, but perhaps a bit complicated for some of you. We generally in taxation law we make a distinction between a subsidiary. You heard three concepts, if I may. One of them was subsidiary. The other one was branch. The third concept that he used was the concept of permanent establishment. And use PE in the slide. PE. We will talk about this very long in the forthcoming weeks, but just to give you the definition in a nutshell. Subsidiary is a company incorporated under law. It is a legal entity recognized and regulated by commercial law of the state in which it is incorporated. Full stop. And therefore, is taxpayer. Since it is considered a legal entity, autonomous and independent from the shareholders, it is a different taxpayer. So it calculates its own corporate income tax. It is liable to tax. It has to be consistent with the compliance duties, etc., etc., etc. So it's something different. Branch is actually a part of a company which is placed in another jurisdiction, which is not incorporated independently from the company that originated it. Sorry. Let's assume that the Volkswagen company is a multinational incorporated under German law. They decided to build a different factory in Brazil because there the working force is cheaper. So they go to Brazil, they hire people, they purchase a building, they bring their machinery there, and they start producing their car in Brazil. So they make a car in Brazil, they sell the cars in Brazil, they make money in Brazil, but there is no Brazil Volkswagen GmbH or whatever it is, or something like that, or anonymous society. It's just a physical, material place where goods are placed, where business activities carried out. No, it is not independent under law from the company that originates it. That's a branch, part, a slice of the same cake. While in the case of a subsidiary, there are two cakes. That's very basic. Okay, this is very important under both commercial law, for torts, for liability, for fraud and solvency law, but also for taxation. Because in case of subsidiary, we have two different legal entities, two different tax liabilities. In this case, Vladimir, what is the situation, or what is the?
Let's say the situation when you are having a key with, let's say, some, what's it called, some nougat inside, or toffee, which could be put out. So you try to put out their pieces of cake, and these nougat threads are connected with it. And once it could be broken, or if you are not holding one piece of cake too tightly, nougat will drop out. So actually, that's what happens with the branch or permanent establishment. That's what would happen. The head office may just take money out of a branch easily because branch is not separate company. It doesn't need to pay out dividends. The only thing which is necessary to pull money out of branch, in this case, is just amount of money on the branch bank account and order from a head office. That's it. To avoid such type of treatment, to avoid such type of withdrawing money out of the country, the states usually introduce a special tax on net profit of permanent establishment. Kazakhstan, for instance, does. I don't exactly remember the situation in Belarus, but Kazakhstan 100% does that at the same rate as for dividends. So you are creating permanent establishment, you are creating a branch, you don't create a subsidiary. Okay, good, go on. But after you pay corporate income tax on the taxable profit, you take what remains and you tax it second time. Then tax on permanent establishment. Nothing like that in Russia. So there are a lot of branches of various foreign companies in Kazakhstan because this regime is very tasty. And I may remember even such big companies as Ernst & Young, well, EY nowadays, PwC, Deloitte, all of them do have a local company which does audit and a branch of a foreign company which normally does consulting. I don't know why they structured their business like that, but this is a fact. Actually, it is not a unique thing. So everyone in business just knows that and it is accepted. That's it. Okay, so that was it about the tax rates. So, okay, tax period calendar year, but the tax should be reported 4 times a year at the end of each quarter, accumulated. Well, nothing too complicated here. What could be important, especially considering that we do have here international taxation class, is the residence. So, when a company is recognized Russian resident, here is criteria: place of registration. Full stop. So, if the company is registered in Russia, it is assumed that this is Russian resident. If the company is registered in Italy, but it is working in Russia, okay, it's not Russian resident. Well, the treaties, the international treaties, may provide some different readings, may provide some different norms, but normally, if even if the company is managed from Russia, but is located abroad, it is a foreign company. Nothing exists in Russia from legal standpoint. Well, maybe a branch, maybe from establishment, but not the company itself. I believe Professor Grecci will discuss this with you in more details later, because it leads us to a concept of place of effective management. But that is something, a concept not really used in Russia. So, pardon me, I just omitted for now. Well, what about permanent establishment? There are several criteria when such arrangement arises. Well, at the time, Grecci mentioned Ferrari, a car producer, a car dealer. So, if Ferrari will create a showroom in Russia, Moscow, in St. Pete, what this showroom will do? There will be a place where a couple of items of Ferrari cars will be shown. The potential customers may look upon them, ask questions, place an order. There will be no activity. Well, in this case, there will be no permanent establishment. It will be called auxiliary activity, supplementary activity. So, if there will be production, construction side, use of natural resources, some other activity, well, in these cases, the branch will create permanent establishment. If there will be no income generating activity, no. In this case, it's, the activity is considered auxiliary and no permanent establishment will be created. Basically, no such issue will appear, and the company will not consider. Okay, what next? A basic overview of some technical issues. Russia, some historical reason, the income is divided into 3 parts: sales income, non-sales income, and non-taxable income. The division between taxable and non-taxable income is understandable. And you may see the suggestions there. The non-tax income is, for example, advance payments. Advance payments are not yet income. It is unearned income if you know this accounting concept. So, the contribution to chartered capital, investment into capital of the company, not income. So, it is quite understandable. For some reason, the sales income and non-sales income are divided in Russia. Well, the accountants and tax authorities are accepting this. And if you look at the expenses, the expenses will be accounted for in a separate way. So, their expenses related to production or sales, the expenses not related to production or sales, and non-deductible expenses. When the expenses are not deductible? Well, in Russia, there is some prototype of what is called GAR, General Anti-Avoidance Principle. Why I call it a prototype? Because the definition is rather basic and rather formalistic. So the expenses will never be deductible if they do not meet one of the criteria. First criteria, documentation support. If you forgot to take invoice from your supplier, you have no document, this income, this expense will never be deductible. Second, lack of connection with income generating activity. For example, if your company decides to host, let's say, New Year party or Christmas party, which is more familiar, should be more familiar here. So, if your company decides to hold a Christmas party, does this Christmas party, is this Christmas party related to the business? Is it related to income generating activity? No, it's sort of entertainment for the employees. In this case, no deductibility of these expenses for tax purposes. And the third criteria, the economic justification. So, what does it mean, economic justification? I mean, the concept itself is rather vague, but if you are unfamiliar with the concept of transfer pricing, there could be one of the answers. If you spend too much, for example, if you decide to invite, let's say, a lecturer as a specialist to provide you a seminar on modern developments in international taxation, so how much your company will pay for such a seminar? 1,000 euro per day, 1,000 euro per hour, 2,000 euro per day, 100 euro per day? No. And we may only answer this question if we know the market. So if the normal rate will be about 100 euro per hour, then, okay, we may spend as much as 800 euro per day, maybe 1,000 euro a day. That would be inconsistent with market level of such expenses. Now, if we, for some reason, will offer 5,000 euro, well, that will be our question because the expenses are not economically justified. You could have hired different professional, pay 800,000. You had this, pay 5,000 a day. It's not justified. So that could be a suggestion. What is this economic justification? So if the expenses do not meet one of these criteria, they go to this rightmost column, not deductible. And besides that, there are lots of other income which are not considered deductible. But this list is closed. So if some of the expenses do meet criteria, but they are included into the list, so this list is closed. They are in the list, okay, no deductibility. They are out of the list, okay, don't classify them either is connected with connected with production and sales or not connected with production and sales, and deduct. That will be good. So,
is that clear enough for your background, or is there something missing so far? You know, in taxation law, when we talk about income, wealth generated, wealth produced, well, we talk about a number in euro for us, ruble for them, which is calculated considering what we get in what respects. Very easy and straightforward even for us as lawyers. But the point is that the state you go, the rule you find. First of all, not everything, not anything can be deducted. not your expenses can be taken away from what you get and therefore decrease your income. Vladimir mentioned a number of cases of expenses which are not deductible or which are not entirely tax deductible. First example was an expense which had nothing to do with the business. You operate a business of selling cars, and then you have a party for your birthday. You pay a lot for that party, but that part has nothing to do with the car. So that expense is left out. This is clear, straightforward, and acceptable. The other example that he made is a bit more complicated, and so much complicated that every state reacts in a different way. Germany, Sweden, Italy, and Russia. When the expense that you incur, that you have, is disproportionate to the value of the good or the service you get. You sell cars, and you need tires for the cars. And you, let's say, average price of a tire, I don't know, say 80 €. And you purchase a tire for 8,000 €. Does not make sense. When the tax administration look at your balance sheet, your invoice, what? You bought a tire for 8,000, and you want that 8,000 tax deductible? No way. Because that's disproportionate, because that does not make sense, and I have the suspect, just a suspect, that you didn't actually pay 1,000. But that's just a fake invoice. You pay much less than that, and probably that transaction was not entered into the condition that was shown. So, and just to give very put the comment very simple. So, in taxation law, every day we have challenges on this. Taxpayers claim to have expenses which do not entirely make sense for taxation law. And in cases like that, the point becomes up to what extent the cost you incurred can also be taxed. We'll talk about this later on in the seminar. I just wanted to clarify the most sensible issue that will be put on the table today.
Thank you. And there is one more point here. A while ago, to make correct, yesterday I pointed out that Russian Federation consists of 83 regions, including 2 federal cities and 81 regions, well, as a bigger. I also mentioned to you that their federal, corporate tax is going to both federal and regional budget. Well, the correct point to state would be this. The federal budget, according to the tax code, takes 2% of their taxable profit, while a region takes 18%. But the tax code also allows each region to decide whether it wants to levy lower tax. And the region may decrease its share from 18% down to 13.5%. Why? Number of reasons. Direct investment is the most popular one. So how that actually works? And here we go to this particular photo. I believe you recognize the brand which is shown at on the building at the right part of the photo. Samsung. I believe it is some cute to have Samsung phone or some other equivalent phone. In Russia, this is the plant where some TV sets, some home appliances are being produced. So, now, what is about the structure in the left part of the slide? Normally, these structures you may see on the Russian roads when you are crossing the border between the regions. Well, the Russian Federation is the state with no borders between the regions. There are administrative borders for a number of reasons, including texturization. But you just cross them, you see nothing except the signs like that. So, what happens here? You see, there is a sign, and that makes the line. So the plant is located within 50 meters from the border into that particular region. It's called Kaluga region. And this photo is taken from the Moscow region. So they are adjacent to one another. So why Samsung did that? In fact, a number of companies use the Kaluga region situation. Samsung, Lotte, Peugeot Citroën, Novolimpetskaya Melbourne plant, Nestlé, Vapor, and several others. Just the example of Samsung is that funny. It is located too close to the border. Why? Kaluga region thought, okay guys, you, the business people, if you come to us, if you invest $100 million or more into our region, that is to build plants, to hire employees, to create business, if you spend $100 million in creating business in our region, you will pay not 18% of corporate profits tax to us, but 13.5%. And many businesses replied. Many businesses came into that region and set up their plants, hired their local people, created new businesses, new working places, and so on. And this region is now quite prosperous because they introduced such a generation. They introduced regional tax benefits. So that's how it works in Russia. Any questions here? Is clear? Okay, so now let's skip that because that will lead us into quite complicated issues. So let's then switch to value-added tax. Well, this tax all of you should know because if you buy something in the supermarket, you will definitely pay the tax. So this tax exists in Russia, and the arrangement is pretty similar to European approach. So who are the taxpayers? Basically, legal entities and individual entrepreneurs, the persons, whether legal persons or natural persons, who are doing business, who are selling something, or the persons who are importing goods into the territory of Russia. So these persons are taxpayers. In many countries, there exists special VAT registration. If a person conducts big enough business, the person should go and register as VAT payer. No, this doesn't exist in Russia. No special registration is necessary. However, if your business is small enough, you may notify tax authorities and not pay the tax. If your turnover is lower than 2 million rubles, which is about 40,000 euros. If your turnover is lower than that, okay, you may notify tax authorities and not pay the tax. So this is kind of exemption. Yes, and basically that's it with the administration part. Now, what is very special is the tax treatment of different types of goods and services. So, how the tax treatment works? There is a general regime, a general tax rate of 18%. 18% is applicable for most goods and services. Then there is a reduced rate of 10%, which is applicable for a limited list of goods and services, and most of them are basic food products like milk or dairy products, meat, bread, bags, fruits, but not delicacies. If you will try to sell, how do you call this hammer, prosciutto?
At the ham, yeah.
So if you try to sell prosciutto and claim 10% rate, no, they will not work. Prosciutto is considered to be a delicacy, and then it will be subject to 18% rate. But if it will be about raw meat, okay, 10%, fine. And besides, there are some books, periodicals, children's goods, which are also subject to 10%. So, as you may compute, socially important goods. Well, I wonder how the books fit in, but it is considered the book are also socially important, so 10% rate is applicable for them. And for periodicals, except for how it runs in the technology, so except for those of advertising or erotic nature. So these are not eligible for 10% rate. Full 18% rate should be applicable. Okay, then there is one more special rate, and that is 0%. Applicable for export. So if oil is being sold abroad, or if gas is being exported from Russia via Ukraine to the European Union, 0% rate will be paid by Gazprom. So 0% is applicable for all export. Gas is just the most notorious example, just as oil. But if Russia decides to sell, or even Samsung producer TV sets or something, okay, still 0% will be applicable. What else? Some cross-border transportation, some cosmic activities. So Russia is also famous for operating Kazakhstan, Baikonur Airport and Cosmodrome. And if Russia launches some satellite, and this satellite is used to transmit TV signal, phone calls, or something else, still 0% again. Okay, so that makes a special rate of 0%. Well, there will be non-vegetable goods, non-vegetable services. Okay, still quite understandable. Diplomats, for example. If diplomatic missions are buying something, no VAT. Well, this is common trait. I believe this is derived from Vienna Convention on Diplomatic Relations. They are exempt from most of taxes, except for those which represent payment for some services, like it happens in New Zealand, for example.
Consideration for something. Yeah.
So VAT is one of such taxes. And then what are other examples? Some medical goods and services, some, let's say, food in student canteens. So do you have some student canteen here? Well, if it qualifies like this, okay, 0%, and there will be some other issues. Well, still not a complete range. And there is a very special rate of what is there, 15.25%. Well, this rate is mentioned separately. I mean, not many Russian students know about it. Now, you Italian students know about that, Swedish students, Spanish students, Uzbekistani. Okay, you know about this. 15.25% rate is used if company is being sold as a whole business. Did you cover this type of transaction before?
In the first semester, yes. For them, you are a bit familiar with VAT, not in theory, but I'm pretty sure in practice, because you paid it every day. In Europe, I think you already know that, but the situation is a bit more simple. And in the case of Italy, and we can ask what is the situation in Sweden and in Germany, you may remember that we have 3 rates only. One of 22%, which is the standard. We have one reduced rate of 10%, and we have a very, very reduced, extra reduced rate of 4%. Full stop. Then we have clearly operations that fall outside the scope of VAT. In this case, for instance, sale of business as a whole, as a going concern, that operation is outside the scope of VAT, but it does trigger another different tax, which is the registration tax. So for us, 22, 10, 4%. Sweden?
25, 12.5, 6.
Okay. I think they are the only country with the rates higher than ours. And in Germany, a bit less, I think.
97 and you told me.
I think hotels have an almost about 11 countries.
Okay, so more you see roughly. For those of you who are not from Europe, maybe you have good to remember that we are not entirely free to fine-tune the rates as we wish. There is maximum, and then the European Union allows us, the single country, to choose the rate in a range. So every state is free to decide, but within certain limits. That's it.
But let me introduce you one different approach. So here you see the Russian approach. Now, could you remember what are the rates in Kazakhstan? Okay, see, just rates. 12%, the common rate, 0% used for export. Export and the cross-border transportation. I mean, Kazakhstan is not unique here because South Korea, for example, uses the similar regime. They also use 10% general rate and I believe also 0% for some activities. So there exists such type of regime. But Russia is sticking to European type. By the way, here on this slide I mentioned 18%, 10%, 0%, and 15.25%. That makes 4 rates. In fact, my parents, who happen also to be university lecturers, but in a slightly different subject, they like to tease their students with the question: how many value-added tax rates exist in Russia? Most students are counting 3, those which are listed in below. Almost no student knows about this 15.25% rate because it is mentioned separately, and when scaling the textbook they are fixed. But in fact, there are 2 more rates, and it's quite a question why the students are not counting them at all. Because these rates are 18 divided by 118 and 10 divided by 110. So they're used in several cases. Basically to extract value-added tax from the amount which includes it. This may be not a trick in Kazakhstan, in Italy or in the European Union, because the definition of tax base is very straightforward. Actually, this is not the case in Kazakhstan, because the definition in Kazakhstan is also very straightforward. You have a price of a transaction, which may be
It's supposed to be.
So you may have like a tax base of 100, and that's it, the price of transaction without a value-added tax included. So if you need to calculate value-added tax here, Kazakhstan example, 12%, you just add 12 here, and you receive the price, which is to be written on price tag, 112. That's it. Now, in Russia, the definition is not that clear. And in business, the accountants and the tax lawyers demand that it should be clearly written whether the price of the contract is including value-added tax or excluding. And so, if, for example, the contract prescribes prepayment, if the customer must prepay a certain amount in advance, so what the supplier has to account for? The supplier has to account for prepayment of, let's say, 118. This is the amount of money supplier received from customer. Now, the tax law in Russia demands that the supplier recognize value-added tax at once, even from repayment. And in this case, these ratios of 18 divided by 118 or 10 divided by 110 will be used, because this prepayment is considered to be including value-added tax. The question is how you take it out so to make 18% of the net price. So the net price should be 100 here, and the net value-added tax should be 18, so to make it fair. And so here you have that ratio, 18 divided by 118. So to extract that amount from the prepayment. So that makes the total number of 6 value-added tax rates in Russia. Complicated, right?
Not that much. We have something similar in Europe as well. I mean, to cut out, the amount of VAT from the current payment. That's it.
Okay. So there is not much more to tell about value-added tax from now on, except for one economic fact. So I already mentioned that export is taxed at a 0 rate. Now, how this is normally done? How the company pays this tax? So there are several ways of arranging it, but one of them is the company prepays the tax, then within half a year, within 6 months, it should prepare the documents confirming the export, show it to the tax authorities, and got the reimbursement. Well, the trick is, how do you think? How much the budget collects of value-added tax, and how much it pays in this reimbursement way, refund of value-added tax. Okay, let's talk about percentage. So if the federal budget collects 100% of value-added tax, how much of that would you expect it to refund for exporters? 1%, 5%, 10%, 20%, 50%, 100%? Oh, any guesses? Okay, yeah. You're accustomed to the type of question. Okay, first guess. Yours. So, the budget collects 100% of value-added tax, and this should be a refund for exporters, because they have to pay at a 0 rate, but they prepay the tax so to get refund later, after they prepare all the documents. So how much tax goes out for the refund? 100%. So 100% was collected, 100% goes away. A bit too much. Any other guesses? 20%. 70%. Well, still very low, and still a bit too much. Well, in fact, 45%. About 45%. So, you mentioned that the government collects, what she collects, 2.5 trillion rubles of value-added tax, while it, it's the net amount already, while it pays to the exporters, while it refunds to the exporters 1 trillion rubles. Well, slightly less than 45.
It's very,
about 35.
this gives evidence that your economy is very an exporting economy.
First, it is a very exporting country, but then the question should be, who are the companies which are receiving these refunds?
Only one.
No, there are not only one. There are about 20 of them.
Doing natural resources, I guess.
Gazprom and other companies, natural resource companies. So you see, the resource industry is very much supported in Russia.
This perhaps is a bit, we will hopefully go to VAT later on in this course. Perhaps this last example was a bit too much with you. But just to clarify it, VAT is a tax on consumption. So it hits consumption on national scale. The leader told us that, Mandas told us that exportation is not charged with VAT. So if your company exports, your company does not charge those sales with VAT, and therefore does not pay the state VAT. Okay? The point is that if I export and I don't charge VAT, well, I bought something from the state, and I was charged with VAT. So what is my situation as an exporting company? I cannot charge VAT, but I've been charged with it. I'm in credit, therefore, with the state. I want this money back. The leader told us that money back, claim back are very high amount. How much was that one?
3 trillion rubles, which is divided by roughly 40 or rather 50 already. So it should be around 20 billion euros a year.
Huge amount. What does it mean? It means that the majority, or there is a very huge slice of the Russian economy which is export-oriented, perhaps much more than in Italy. I don't know the situation in Germany, not that much, perhaps, I don't know. What is the evidence of that? The evidence of that is that a lot of money are made in Russia because of the exportation. More money in the exportation than perhaps in Germany. And the vast majority of the exports made by Russia are exports concerning natural resources. Gazprom company, many other, they just export gas, oil with zero VAT. They've been charged with VAT. Here comes the credit. So VAT refunds and VAT charge is good for taxation, but it is also an evidence of the status of the national economy. The VAT situation, payment, credits, etc., give us a lot of information about the country and the country economy. Is that country oriented to exportation? Has it got a very strong internal market? Is it a fair balanced economy? We got those information also from VAT. That was just to clarify it more for them, since they are.
Thank you. I'd like to mention one text which is less complicated, less scaly on the background of value-added tax or corporate profit tax. That is corporate property tax. So this is regional tax. So a region is normally introducing it by the law. So Kaluga region may introduce it or may abolish it, but it will not affect the companies located, let's say, in Moscow region. So the tax base is averaged book value. So in this case, one of the very rare cases in Russia, when for tax purposes we need to take information out of financial accounting. So we need this information from financial accounting, like average their book value throughout the year, and then apply the rate to the results. So the rate is maximum 2.2%, but the regions may introduce lower rates. Just that's up to them. In fact, almost all regions introduce this maximum possible rate, so to get enough money for their own state project or rather regional project. So well, a list of benefits. Okay, they may introduce their benefits. Okay, and well, that's basically it. Text period is calculated here, but the text should be reported on a quarterly basis. So 4 times a year. Not so much, and well, that's it. Basically, with the corporate taxation. I mean, I outlined the main taxes, but the energy taxation that will be subject to separate talks, and well, will be tomorrow. But then I would like to go onwards to their activities of well, special economic zone, just to highlight them and to proceed to common economic space. So you see here that there are lots of special economic zones in Russia. There are around 57, if I'm not mistaken. They are divided into 4 broad categories, but basically the treatment is the same. Tax holidays. So the companies which are located in these zones, which are working in the industries designated for the particular zone, they may enjoy 0. Well, let me show it to you here. 0 corporate profits tax for a federal level, 0 value-added tax in case of port and special economic zones, exemption for 10 years from corporate property tax, and exemption for 5 years from land tax, and low social security contributions. Now, that's I must tell you additionally. Social security contributions in Russia are to be paid by the companies. So that makes each, let's say, 1,000 euro paid out as a salary, costing to a company of, on average, 1,360 euros. Because on top of each 1,000, the company also needs to pay these social security contributions. Now, in case of special economic zones or scope of project, the additional payments constitute less than half of that, 14%. So this is the idea. So the special economic zone provides some beneficial treatment. And by the way, are there special economic zones in Italy?
No, technically, we used to have, but then they have been progressively deleted because of European Union law. There are still a few economic zones in qualified countries, mainly Ireland, Spanish Island, and a few other, but year after year they have been progressively deleted. Only a few of them are.
That's what I remember. There was something about that in Germany. There is a regional island,
yeah, for VAT purposes only.
Oh,
that's tolerated because it's in the law establishing the VAT. But that's only, we have a couple of zones like that in Italy as well. But those are not special economic zones in the meaning that you have here in order to boost the economy, just for VAT.
But indeed, as Barbara mentioned here, these zones were designed to boost particular sectors of economy in some of the regions. Just to get back to this picture, what it should be. Okay, and this case, Moscow is located around here. So near Moscow, there are 2 areas designed to boost the high-tech industry, so-called technoparks. Then there are several areas where the production activities are to be boosted. For one of them, this one actually, in Republic of Tatarstan, I really wonder whether they need that special economic zone at all, because this is now a very developed region, but with the special economic zone, it is even boosted further. So there are lots of production in there, starting from some basic food products like cookies, and up to very developed machinery. And in some areas, Altai Mountains, Baikal Lake, For example, this is about tourism, ecotourism primarily. Well, these regions are not very developed, so in these cases, I completely agree that some incentives are necessary there to develop the regions. Because you see, the rush is quite long, so from Kaliningrad here down to Vladivostok there, it's about 9,500 kilometers. So their transportation is quite an issue there. Going for tourism this environment. No, okay, special or common economic space, CES. I introduced it earlier in this session, and now let's what is that about? So, first, what I would like is basic freedoms. So here you see two of them: freedom of movement of labor force and freedom of establishment. I bet you heard about these arrangements here in the European Union. And guess where we got that idea from? So the idea is within CES, there is no need for visas, no need for work permit. So I'm myself possessing Russian citizenship, live in Kazakhstan and work in Kazakhstan without all this bureaucratic paperwork. Which is well, the only thing I did in Kazakhstan is register with immigration police. That's it. So work permits, visas, that's necessary, and it works in all directions. So there are Belarusians working in Russia. There are Russians working in Kazakhstan. It's rather simple. So this is though some protection measures still could be enforced. Because of, let's say, state programs against unemployment. But that makes a very limited use. For example, the foreigners may not apply for state unemployment allowances, for example. Okay, what about freedom of establishment? The companies from all these three countries may work in other countries. That's it. They should not suffer any more burdensome treatment than their local companies. Well, that actually doesn't mean that if company is considered non-resident, it will be treated differently from other non-residents. No. Non-resident status has nothing to do here. It's only their status of administration nature. So if let's say Russian subsidiary of Ferrera comes into Kazakhstan, establishes branch in Kazakhstan, or if it establishes branch in Belarus, these two branches will be treated like any other branch located within the country. So no particular restrictions. Though there are some restrictions, and they are somewhat related to their freedom of movement of labor force. For example, a person may go from Russia into Kazakhstan, work there as a journalist, but this person may not be chief editor of local newspaper or journal or mass media. This is still allowed. There is a list, a special list of activities and positions which are not allowed for foreigners. So these freedoms do exist, but they are rather limited. Just as you may also see there, foreign companies may not trade with alcohol or drug substances. I mean, this could be a perfectly legal business, but foreign companies may not do that. Only local companies are entitled to do that. Same happens with, for example, education. Same happens with private security services and so on. So freedom exists, but there are some exceptions. Okay, two more freedoms are freedom of trade with services and freedom of movement of capital. So Again, with those exceptions which I mentioned, the services may be offered in all three countries by one of the presidents. And there should be no restrictions on the suppliers, on the amount of supply to be bought locally or externally. No such limitation. Though some governmental purchases may be limited. For example, if government decide to purchase some services, some transportation services, they may be offered, this tender may be offered only to local companies, and that will be tolerated. Okay, what about freedom of movement of capital, investments, and financial services, like banking services, foreign exchange and market services, services of securities brokers, and so on. So, most beneficial treatment, basically foreign banks, foreign brokers are welcome, but no restrictions except for those mentioned earlier should be. That's it. The freedoms are launched, and actually this is rather nice development. So, what else would you like to raise about CS? Considering that we are here now in international taxation class, here are the common rules about indirect taxation. And there is a main agreement, which is called Agreement on Principles of Levy of Indirect Taxes to on export and import of goods, provision of works, and rendering of services within customs union. Yes, it was adopted back in times of customs union, but now they are still applied. Only the name of the union was changed to CES, Common Economic Space. And to that agreement, there are 3 additional protocols on technical issues. Mechanism of levying of indirect taxes in case of export and import of goods, same story for works and services, and exchange of information. So there are common grounds for all countries located in these 4 documents. So what are these grounds? As you may see here, 0% of value-added tax for export of goods, same rules for value-added tax offset, or it is named in the European Union deductions, when you are deducting the income VAT. So same rules are applicable for all 3 countries. Same basic set of documents confirming export. Well, a while ago I told you that in order to claim 0 VAT rate applicable for export, you need to prepare some documents. Set of documents is defined in there. Same rules to determine the date of shipment. And there is 2 more points. Divide of value-added tax and excise duties on import at the rates of the destination country. So, if you look back at the map, for example, Kazakhstan is located down there, about here. So, it is landlocked country. If there is some shipment which comes to Vladivostok seaport here, and it needs to be transported across Siberia and then to the south to Kazakhstan, see there is transit, where this import should be taxed. Here in Vladivostok, when it comes into Russia, no, destination point. The containers here will be regarded, will be reviewed whether all their seals are intact, whether everything is okay with them. Then they will be put on, let's say, railroad, shipped into Kazakhstan. Customs clearance will happen in Kazakhstan. So, value-added tax on import will be levied on Kazakhstan. Excises, if they happen, will be levied in Kazakhstan. Russia will serve just as transit country, and that's it.
Okay, it's a bit complicated, I'm afraid, but these are the same rules that even we have in Europe. So even customs clearance within the European Union is inspired by rules which are similar to these or vice versa. If in Italy we use the port of Rotterdam to get goods from Japan or China, goods are delivered in Rotterdam, but if at that very point the importer say that these goods are going to go to Italy, then custom clearance is actually made in Italy and VAT is charged there as well. So in theory, or we tend to think that custom duties are supposed to be paid in the place where goods enter into the territory of the Union, but that's not entirely true, because if at that very moment it's clear that the goods are in transit for somewhere else, the clearance of the customs is made somewhere else. That's the point. And of course, in our example, VAT as well. That's a very sensitive point, very important, but if I may add, also very dangerous, because it allows you to sneak through the territory of the Union with the risk of something to be lost somewhere.
Well, and that is actually quite a concern in Russia, because the goods could be sneaked in Kazakhstan from China or from Kyrgyzstan, and then they are basically internal free market, which is not really welcome. So this is a concern, but let's get back to the rules. And still there are differences. For example, place of supply of goods determined under domestic rules. While they are totally similar for Russia and Belarus, because Belarus basically copied a number of provisions from Russian text code, Kazakhstan may provide something different. Okay, documents. Basic set of documents is defined on the common ground, but local authorities may demand some additional documents considering their local rules. And transfer pricing, the price control rules. They are domestic for each member state. So there are no common transfer pricing rules, no common pricing control rules for tax purposes on the level of customs union. Now, what could be the implications here? Well, here is a famous example of it's famous in Kazakhstan and not so much in Russia, because it was Kazakhstani company which suffered, and suffered quite a lot, 8% of turnover. Well, why 8% of turnover? What was the reason? And the description goes like this. A Kazakhstani company called Rainback Bottlers produces a number of beverages, including juices. And some of the juices were created for kids, children goods. You may remember from the slides that children goods are taxable at 10% rates in Russia. Now, they were totally sure that if they import these juices into Russia, and you know, the moving across the border within customs union is still treated as import or export, and on import, when you get a tax on import is defined, even in the transactions within the customs union. So what happened there? They very soon found that imported juices are taxed under a thing called classification. So next code just tells, okay, children goods 10% rate. The trick is, next code doesn't tell you what are children goods. So you need to look elsewhere to find out. I mean, Russia is very formalistic country. If something is written in the law or in some other regulations, then it could work. If something is not written in there, the officials will deny it. So what happened there? Import juices are classified under the so-called 10 bad affairs, which stands for classificator of goods for cross-border trade of customs union. And that states that juices for kids could be supplied only if they are under 0.35 liter per pack. Very small packs. Well, somehow Rainbow Partners were not aware of that, and they were trying to supply their so to say wholesale bunch or wholesale canisters of juices, which were about 10 or more liters. They were denied 10% rate. Why? Because their packaging is not 0.35 liters. So they were charged with 80% rate. Now, they were unhappy because, okay, they how come? The Russian producers are selling the same juices just for under 10% variation rate. They are charged 80%. How come? Well, the tax authorities asked them. Well, because they are trading in Russia, they are using OKP, that is Russian classificator of products, which is used only for internal trade, and it creates no limits for kids juices by volume. So they're okay to use 10% rate. You are not okay because you are importer, you use a different document, your juices should be packaged in 0.35 liter. That's it. And yes, by the way, if you are trying to resell the juices internally, still the same document should be used. Consequently, 18% rate will be charged at every iteration of the customer. Cool, right? Now, the point is, actually, this whole picture lacks one particular detail. What this detail is about? It is about how much value-added tax the Russian producers are to pay and to charge their customers. In fact, there is one additional norm, sanitary norm, that if Russian companies would like to sell juices for kids, they must still adhere to this 0.35 liter per pack automatically. Otherwise, they could not claim that these juices are for kids. So this is sanitary requirement of doctors. And the Russian companies adhere to it automatically. Rainbow Bottlers, Kazakhstani company, didn't know about that, and they suffer this 8% rate. Or at least that's what they thought. So, you see, customs union, common market, same area, extra.
Yeah, so same language but different accent. I would say something like that. So thank you.
Okay, so may I introduce some other issues, or this is it for today?
I think we have to stop in order to prevent a possible conflict with criminal law, which is supposed to be held here later on.
I don't know what to be with criminal law.
But okay, again.